I wanted to start with LEDC. Our mission is to promote economic growth in the Liberty area. There are several ways that we do this. First is through industrial attraction. We work with KCADC, we work with Missouri Partnership, Missouri Department of Economic Development, Clay County EDC, we work with consultants, we work with brokers, real estate people, and we get leads from many different places. And it all usually starts with an email. Hey, we've got a company, they're looking to expand, they're looking to grow, they've identified this market, they need 100,000 square feet, they need this, they need that. Do you have anything available? So that's where we come in and we start the process and respond to yes we do or no we don't. Retention and expansion of our current industries is very important to try to maintain and grow what we currently have. So we work with and communicate with our current industries. Entrepreneurship is something that we started a couple years ago, about coming up on 2 years ago, to focus on small business entrepreneurship. Somebody that has an idea that's working on it in their home that wants to grow that idea, and where can they go to get help to be successful? And we'll touch on that here in a little bit. The other part of what we do is we are a public-private partnership. Part of our funds comes from the City of Liberty. The other part comes from our investors. We work with networking events, connecting people to people. With the industrial side and our small business side, it's connecting people to resources that they need. I'll say right resources at the right time that will help them grow. So this is interesting. This is a slide that I made a presentation at the Chamber of Commerce Luncheon in October of 2018. At this time, when I gave this presentation, we had over 1,000 acres of land and no available buildings. This is up in Heartland Meadows Industrial Park. Now, before I go further, I want to say that economic development is a team game that takes a lot of people, that takes a lot of effort, everybody pushing in the right direction to make something happen. A few months after this, if you remember Karen Johnson, we had a conversation, and it started with, Karen, we're missing out on projects, we don't have any buildings. I think I need to recommend that we do a spec building, which is hard to do because I know economic developers that's recommended a spec building and they no longer have that job. So it was hard to do. And if you know Karen, her response was, let me get this right. You want us to incentivize an empty building that we don't know who the client is, we don't know how many jobs we're going to create, we don't know what kind of investment, we don't even know if we want them. Yes, if we want to be in the game, we do. And after some more conversation and talking through the process a few months, we identified that the city's policy did not allow for incentivizing spec buildings. So that was a change that the city council took on and made a change as they wanted to grow and see growth in the industrial sector. So I want to go over and kind of highlight, I'm going to move through these slides pretty quick. Currently there's 5 development projects going on from north of the city to south of the city. We'll go through these. The first one that kick-started everything was Lane 4 project off of South Liberty Parkway. The main building is 710,000 square feet that's constructed. There's sites for additional buildings. You also, anybody been by Casey's? Okay, we've always heard good things about Casey's. This was our first one where we needed to get something going. It's a $62 million investment. So far, there's about 150 jobs that's been created in this project. First one in was Kimco Logistics in Scarborough. Scarborough recently has just doubled their size and expanded. What's interesting to point out is this project was 100% tax abatement for 10 years on the industrial side and no abatement on the retail side. Taxes over that 10-year period, that property would have generated about $2,800. With the pilots, about $8,000. So it's a little bit better, but this was our first project. We had to get the ball rolling. The second project is on site 2 of the city's property, which they sold to Opus Development. It's a 181,000 square foot building, $14 million in investment. We project that when a tenant comes in, they'll create about 180 jobs. The incentive on it was 10 years at 90%. We no longer needed to do the 100. In order to make this project work, that's what was offered. On this piece of property, over a 10-year period, there would have been no taxes on this property because it was owned by the city. Because it's transferred to private hands, with the incentive, that property will generate for almost $400,000 over 10 years, and then go back fully onto the tax rolls. The third project that happened is on 400 acres, or 391 acres, just east of the Ford stamping plant, off to south of South Liberty Parkway. This is a North Point development. The groundbreaking, things are moving fast. We broke ground on June 10th, 2021, just a year ago. There's 7 buildings in this development. We've announced Walgreens. Amazon has been unofficially announced, but the official announcement's coming soon, as they want to tie that to their job recruitment efforts. So they're going to be hiring pretty soon. The other buildings are pretty much full. We haven't been able to announce those yet, but stay tuned. This project, 7 buildings, about 4 million square feet, over $400 million of investment. This was an incentive process over a 20-year period, pointing out that this property was in agriculture. It would generate $21,000 over that same time frame. But with this incentive, it'll generate over $20 million. And I want to give a shout out to Brandon Smith, because he's the one that provided these numbers just to help share this story. The next project is a cold storage project of 13 acres. It's in Heartland Meadows. I had worked on this site for a few years, and we'd submitted on several projects, and nothing really gained traction until we worked with a developer to build a cold storage building. And we broke ground on July 10th, 2021. This is what it looks like today. 167,000 square feet, $18 million worth of investment. What's interesting is we're projecting at the time about 85 new jobs. We've got a deal in the works today. I just say we've got a deal. I was hoping it'd be done today where I could announce it, but we're looking at possibly doubling that number with what we're working on today. But it was 10 years at 90%. This property over 10 years would have generated about $1,000 to the taxing entities. With this project, it'll generate almost $600,000. Liberty Heartland Logistics Center. We was busy in 2020. October 6th, we broke ground. Opus bought land from Hallmark and made an agreement with them to build about an 800,000 square foot building for another distribution facility for them. There's 3 buildings in this project. Hallmark's in the biggest one. Then we've got spec buildings B and C. The walls are up on the Hallmark building now. They've got the ground pretty well cleared for B and C, and they're looking to move forward with the 4th building as well. So this project, 3 buildings, about 1.6 million square feet, capital investment over 150. With the Hallmark project, it was a retention project, and what I mean by that is that at the time, they were looking to consolidate locations, and it could have moved to Kansas, it could have moved somewhere else. It was a very highly competitive project, and if they would not have chose Liberty, we would have lost jobs. Because they chose Liberty and chose to continue to invest in Liberty, we're going to have a net gain of new jobs with this project. The incentives was broken down. There was a total of 15 years for the Hallmark building and 10 years for the other 2 spec buildings. But that property, if nothing would have happened on that property, it would have generated $38,000 over that time frame. With this project, it will generate over $8 million to the taxing entities. So I want to do a little summary. This is on these projects that have already been built or under construction right now. 14 buildings, almost 6 million square feet. Capital investment of 650 million. Estimated jobs about 4,000. Almost 600 acres. But here's the big number. These properties over the incentivized period, if nothing would have happened on these sites, it had generated about $63,000 to tax entities. Because of these projects, because of the abatements that was giving, with the abatements, taxing entities will generate almost $29 million. So sometimes incentives gets a bad name. Sometimes they're not used right. But in these cases, they're used right, and we're seeing what the gains will come. There's other future opportunities we're working on. There's 3 up north. The city still owns 26 acres at Heartland Meadows. There's a 100-acre site that's got rail access that's under auction right now. There's a site down by Ford. Star Development's working on that one. And North Point is taking the big site up there, going through the process for another 9 buildings, about 4 million square feet. And these projects are not in those first numbers. Announcements that we've had is Scarborough, Hallmark expansion, Walgreens, the Ford stamping plant has expanded, the Amazon, and we've got more announcements coming more this year. And as you know, with Ford, they've made announcements about the electric transit, and they're doing a changeover currently. So, with all these new jobs coming, how many of you have a job opening today? A few, okay. So I've got to throw in a few statistics real quick. This is Census Bureau. The date is from 2019, that's the last time they updated. But this shows there's about 2,000 people that live and work in Liberty city limits. There's 10,000 people that leave Liberty to go to work. But there's almost 18,000 people that come into Liberty every day. And it's not that they're leaving to go east, it's just a, this is Clay County. About 31,000 people live and work in Clay County, 56,000 people come into the county, and 70,000 people leave. So this is why there's traffic on the roads. One of the things we did is we talked to some of our businesses. We did a zip code analysis of where people live, and we know where they work. So this company, I won't name them, 7 zip codes is where about half of their employees come from. The other half of their employees come from about 70 zip codes. So when you're hiring, this is an example of where your workforce is coming from. In talking to some employers, how many of you are paying more today than you were 2.5 years ago? So wages is number one thing. You know, we've also heard, you know, there's companies that's now paying $25 an hour. Well, what Target come out with it, Bank of America came out with it. So the landscape on wages has changed. Second thing we hear a lot is culture. You know, what am I a part of? How am I making a change? How am I making a difference? Being part of the culture, being valued as an employee. Third one is flexibility. We hear flexibility a lot. Flexibility, you know, one of them said, if you need to go to a doctor's appointment, can you go? I'm like, well, yeah, I can go. They said, well, can your employee go without getting a point or without? So it's interesting, and we've got an employer that's going to offer part-time positions with full-time benefits. So there's a lot of things that's going outside of the box. There's been a lot more thinking of how can I retain employees. And when I heard that, I'm like, well, you just open yourself up to a whole nother market of employees. Somebody that's a single parent, somebody that's close to retirement that wants benefits. So it's interesting. One of the things they talked about is 2.5 years ago, this is who we are, this is the job description, these are our rules. Today, it's how can we meet the expectations of the employee? How can we be flexible? One I talked to about, the kind of, should we go back to the office or should we not? One employer said, man, we started mandating they come back, and people were quitting, started going up. So we had to be flexible and say, well, maybe come in 1 day a week or 2 days a week. So it's kind of interesting, some of the conversations around that. The last one, pipeline for the future. I think a lot of times we spend on our problems of today. I've got 5 openings today, or I've got 100 openings today, or but what are you doing to help drive your employment for the future? And that's programs like the CAPS program, Network 53 with the school district, KC Tech Academy. I talked with the Sheriff's Department the other day. They have a drug court program to give offenders a second chance, nonviolent offenders a second chance. And I don't know about you, but I'd be highly motivated to go to work if the other option was go to jail. So, but that's an interesting program that learning more about. So, working with tech schools, working with the school system to identify those students early that want to be in that career path in that field and help get them into the system. So I want to switch over to entrepreneurship. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. I see Doug Smith here. He's partners with him, was on the founding team at North Central Business Facilitation in Central Missouri. But basically it's a concept that if you're a business owner, who can you really go to talk about growing your own business? My father always, when we was in business, told me, he says, I trust my banker, but when I go talk to him, we have great conversations, but at the end of the day, he just wants to make sure I can repay my note. When I go talk to my accountant, I really trust my accountant. We have good conversations, but at the end of the day, he tells me I'm spending too much money and I'm not bringing enough in, and I probably ought to cut things like marketing. When I go home at the end of the day, the last thing my wife wants to do is talk about my business. So who can you really talk to about growing your business? And that's why we created Link Business Facilitation. It's a free service that we offer. Jolinda is our business facilitator. She will meet one-on-one confidentially with you and talk to you about 3 things: your product or service, how you market it, and financial management. We usually find that you're good at 1 or 2 of the 3 things, but not all 3. And there's areas that might need to have a resource or another contact or somebody that can help you in those areas. You don't have to do it all yourself. We also have a resource team. I see a few members that's on the resource team, made up of, we've got banker, we've got a CPA, we've got an attorney, we've got other entrepreneurs throughout the community that's on this resource team. In that one-on-one consultation, and it's all confidential, if there's something that Jolinda will never say 1 + 1 is 2. She'll tell you what the formula is, you'll have to do it. So when she identifies an area, she can say, well, with your permission, I can take that to the resource team and get their input and come back and provide you some solutions or some ideas that you can consider and see what works for you. And we've done that with real estate. We've done that. Some of the ones are around patents. So it's kind of interesting, some of the different areas that we see. Some of the types of businesses we see is professional services, retail, restaurant, healthcare. She's done some really fun things with TikTok, with our interns we had last year. They've even got published in this magazine called Liberty Carney Sports. They had a great time with that. The TikTok workshop was fun. It's interesting, she's working a lot around marketing, business concept, research referrals, financial management, product and service. There's one that we're helping with a patent. We've had one copyright issues. So and several of them are startups right out of, doing it out of their house. And they're wanting to, how do I go to the next step? How do I grow? And sometimes you can grow too fast and kill your business if you're not prepared for it. But these are the numbers we're starting to track over the little over a year and a half that we've been doing it. 19 jobs created. We're projecting that the businesses that she's working with, about 24 new ones, about $500,000 in invested capital, and 200,000 in new sales. So she's worked with over 47 businesses to date. So I definitely encourage afterwards to talk to Jolinda about Link Business Facilitation. It's a great program, and at the end of the day, and I kind of view our organization as kind of like an air traffic controller, because we direct information where it needs to go, when it needs to go, and connect people to who they need to see at the right time. So, and we're glad. Prior to 2 years ago, we only did that for the industrial side and industrial growth, and now we're doing it for our small businesses and entrepreneurs. The last thing I'll say, since Minions is coming out, this is my attempt at humor. In economic development, it takes a team. I mean, we're all in this together, and my philosophy is a rising tide raises all ships. Get involved. Make sure you're involved with the chamber, HDLI. If you have questions about Liberty Economic Development, come holler at us. We'll be glad to talk about what we do. But get involved. And I think in these slides you've seen that there's a lot of growth that's happened very quickly. And I can tell you that when you look at communities that's 50,000 population and down, they're not seeing this kind of growth. So this is very exciting times. And what I see with this type of growth, we're going to see more housing, and I think we're going to see more opportunities for retail, commercial services. There's some other things that if Brandon was here, I'd let him talk about, because that way I'm not on the hook. But there's some really cool stuff that's coming down the pipeline. Stay tuned.